I just got back from watching both The Backrooms and Obsession. Did I theater hop? I'm not going to say, but yes. So I went to go see Obsession, which is what I really want to talk about here. And I'll be honest, my take from it is a little bit different than what I have seen other takes go from it. I believe that this film really speaks to a thing that this generation, my generation, has a high amount of difficulty with, and that is commitment. Let me explain. So I think if you watched Obsession and you liked it, then you're a cuck. And my reasoning for that is because let's just break down Obsession. Obviously, this video is going to have spoilers, so you've been warned ahead of time. Let's break down Obsession, right? So it's this guy. His name is Bear. He really likes this girl named Nikki, who's a friend of his, and he happens to get across to this place that sells these, ornaments for people, accessories, whatever. He finds this one thing called One Wish Willow, I think is what it is, and you like wish, then you like break a piece of wood, and then that wish supposedly comes true, right? So, you know, fast forward, he gets to this point where he's like, I wish that Nikki loved me more than anyone else in the entire world. Breaks the wood, right? Instantly that happens, and it becomes true, right? And then as we go along, it's a good thing at first. Bear's really happy, and they have some really good moments. But there's something off, something off about Nikki, and it's like apparent to him. It's apparent to her friends. Like this is really just weird how she switched up so fast to really liking Bear like as much as she does. She really is obsessed with him. So he notices some things about her, and she has some like weird, quirks that happen along the way and whatever. And then, it becomes apparent at some point in the movie where, you know, doing doing that One Wish Willow replaced it. Like was Nikki in the same body, but it replaced her, like her essence, with the essence of that which Bear wanted. So instead of it being real Nikki, it was replaced by the version of Nikki that Bear really wanted, which was the version that was obsessed with him. So, and then we find out that like the real version of Nikki is still out there, but she's like trapped and blah blah blah. The only way to get her back is to, to either kill Nikki or and release her, or that the person who made the wish, aka Bear, kills himself, and then that wish is taken away, right? So, um, sorry. At the end of the movie, Bear decides to kill himself, and then Nikki is released from that essence that was in her, and then it's the real Nikki back, and then, that's the end of the movie. It's not a happy ending. A lot of, pretty much all of her friends die, and she's like left crying on the couch, but she's, back to being normal, Nikki. So let's break this down, right? In the area of commitment, right? What is it that a lot of people these days are very scared of when it comes to relationship? Because this movie is it's largely based on relationship, right? This guy wants to have a relationship with this girl, right? Um, and it's a very common series of events where the guy really likes her, but he's maybe shy or something, and he doesn't really know how to go about it. Um, so, but what I guess constitutes here for this movie to make it so make what I made a statement of earlier, saying that if you watch this movie and you liked it, then you're a cuck. What makes that true? Well, let's think about this here. So we have even from like the beginning of the movie, right? This guy already seems like a cuck. Like he doesn't do anything really. He's kind of a loser. I don't even know how he had this group of friends. He's probably like the person that like the cool guy, probably Ian or something, brought him in and he was like the plus one, and because he's the plus one, he like happened to be there. Because I don't think this guy, if you watch the movie, you can tell like this guy is not doing shit on his own. So he's already kind of a loser in that aspect. As these movies go, he's usually a loser. Um, but he really likes this girl, and I guess he's been in this group for a while, so he's made this good connection with this girl. It seems like, and then there's this car scene, right? So he takes her home because she doesn't want to go get wasted or whatever. And he's like, "This is a good opportunity," and she doesn't have a car for some reason. I don't know why, but like none of the girls in this movie have a car. I don't know how old they are, but they're old enough to drink. So yeah, I'm not sure how that works, but both the guys have a car, so they get stuck in this situation constantly where they have to take the girls home, not to their house most of the time, but to the girls' houses. And I guess that's been a good way for them to build a relationship with these people. Anyways, so Nikki is being driven home by Bear, and they get to talking or whatever. And it's this awkward conversation because Bear doesn't really know how to hold a conversation with a girl, even though he's built this relationship with this girl for a while now. Because he's just this loser. Um. Anyways, it gets to this point where like she's obviously giving him signs. It seems like, at least from my perspective, it seems like she's giving him signs. And then she straight up asks him, "Hey, do you like me?" And he looks her dead in the eyes and says, "I don't think this is word for word, but he's like, I think we are great friends." And he cock blocks himself. And I don't know why he does this. Like, I understand being afraid, but how afraid can you be? Like, if someone comes straight up to you and is like, "Man, you," at this point, just tell me you like me. Just tell me that you care about me. Well, I think that we're good friends. Like, what are you doing at this point, man? Like, you can't be. How did you make it this far in life? He's definitely a virgin. He has to be. Anyways, um, so he cock blocks himself there, and then she walks in, and she walks into the house or whatever, and he gets mad at himself, which rightfully so, because I would be mad at myself too if I was such a bitch. And he's like, and then for some reason, I guess like in the rush, he forgot to give her the one wish willow because he wanted to give her that originally. So he just takes the one wish willow, and because he can't give that to her, instead of waiting the next day or later to do it out of frustration, he takes her gift, opens it up, and uses it for himself. So I'm not really sure how that works there, but I guess I don't know. It's hard thinking from the mind of a person like that. But anyways, he breaks and he's like, "Oh, I wish that Nikki loved me more than anyone else in the world." And she stops dead in her tracks, on her doorstep. And she like turns around and she's like, "Do you want to come inside?" Come on, bro. Come on, bro. Surely this guy will cock block himself from that, right? At this point, like, sure, you cock blocked yourself earlier when she said, "Do you like me?" But you know what? You're getting a second chance. You're getting a rare second chance that most people never get. Do you want to come inside? Well, I don't know. I think you've had too much to drink, buddy. This guy is pissing me off at this point, dude. It's just like you. He probably is a virgin by choice. Like he's being offered this. I don't know what else you want at this point, dude. The girl of your dreams, the girl that you've made very obvious is the girl of your dreams, is coming up to you and is saying, "Hey, I really." At this point, she's like, "I like you and I want you to come inside." Right? Obviously, there's enough hint there for that, and she straight away says, "Hey, do you want to come inside?" Then she says, she goes into this because she's like obsessed with him at this point. Ooh, obsession. Ooh. Um, she gets to this point where she's like, blah blah blah, throwing out all this stuff about her dad, having cancer, which we find out later wasn't even true, and she's making up any reason whatsoever. And I feel like this is another big hint, like she is obviously like she's this close to just taking her sodden panties off and throwing them in his face at this point because she is making it very, very, very obvious. Like, so much so that I think that anyone, I guess, besides Bear, could tell. And she, and he still cockblocks himself. He's making up all these reasons. But I don't know. I don't think this is the right thing to do. And she ends up really having to force it. She gets in his car. She like is going through these mood swings or whatever, probably on her period. And then she like puts her head down on the dash and she just starts like crying. Like, my dad is dying and I just want to go to your house because that's a really, that's a very natural thing that girls want to do when their father is dying of cancer and that they really just want to get laid. At least I think. I could be wrong. But she ends up going to his house and then it's like, and then, we skip forward in the movie a little bit and let's talk more about like some of her quirks, right? So he gets to this point, like Bear gets to the point in the movie where he starts complaining to some of his friends, Ian and I forget the other girl's name, but anyways, Sarah, I think. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, I guess whatever. But he gets to this point where he's talking with his friends, in different situations, and he's like, like she's so great, it's really great, we're having a great time, but she's got these like, she's got these quirks, she's got these freakouts, she's got these things that I don't really care for. And he starts like going through this episode where he's wondering, man, I don't know if I want to be with her anymore. Man, I don't know if this is the right choice. I'm like, dude. And I wish it was obvious. I wish it was obvious that I could just be like, dude, this is so like, what are you doing? But I realize that we're in a day and age where it's not obvious. So, we could just continue in the movie here. It gets more and more quirks, and at some point he just forgets about like every good piece of her, um, and it's just like purely worried and focused on like her, flaws and stuff. And then he is, let me think here. He goes through this whole thing. He ends up sneaking out at night because his one Sarah, his one of his other girls, one of his other girls. This guy does not have girls. What am I saying? One of his other friends who happens to be a girl, who happens to like him for some reason. Probably just because he got a good face card and I guess he's a good listener, but that doesn't really take much. But she invites him out to like hang out in her car and she's like, I need to talk to you about some things. It's the least obvious hint of I want to fuck ever. And he's like, well, I don't know if this is the right thing to do. But I really need you. Okay, well, sure. And then he just, walks out with his girl and his girl's talking to Nikki's talking in her sleep or whatever, some shit. Saying like, kill me or whatever. Obviously just having a bad dream. But he and again, he walks out on her while she's having a bad dream, which I would never do. But it's not me. Movie would have been way different if it was me. I'll tell you what. And then he goes and hang out with her in the car, and she's like talking all about this, like maybe Nikki's not the one for you. Maybe you need someone more like me. Well, she doesn't say like me, but Bear makes like the one and only move that he's ever made in his entire life, where he says, like you, and it happens to land. It happens to land. I wish I had the fucking meme of the NBA player who's like taking a shot from the moon, because that's what it is. And then it's also the meme where it's like the 1% LeBron shot from like across the court or whatever, and he makes it because this shot makes it for some reason. And I guess it's because this girl is desperate or whatever, because desperate times call for desperate measures or whatever. Because she's just ready. Her pants were sodden before he even got in the car. So feelings make you do weird things. But he is like, I guess she's trying to go to college, right? She's trying to go to like some university or whatever, and she's like, well, let's, I really thought that would be a good idea if we open my letter together, and it's like her last try because she's a delinquent or something, and so she doesn't actually get to go to colleges very often, or she's never really gotten into one. It's her last chance to get into one, and right as they're about to open it, Nikki comes out of nowhere. She comes out of nowhere and just bashes her head through the window. Justified. She's justly angry. Obviously, you see your boyfriend or girlfriend hanging out in the car with another person that you know that they have feelings for each other too. Obviously, anyone would be angry. It's very justified. Very, very good reasoning there. So she bangs her head through the door, and then she takes. I guess she has a book with her. I'm not really sure if she brought a book with her or if maybe there was a book around or something. But she has like a book. She has like a book in her hand. Nikki does. And she puts it on the steering wheel. And she grabs Nikki's or not Nikki. She grabs Sarah's head and she just goes until Sarah's nothing but a pulp and she's just standing there like which also I also think is highly unrealistic because I would never let that happen. Now I understand adrenaline rushes, and if you saw your boyfriend or girlfriend in a car with someone else and you were really angry or whatever, I understand having like that kind of strength. Um, but I also think that it's now I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but I think that it's unrealistic to be like you slamming somebody's head into a book could like, especially a girl. Now I don't want to sound sexist, but it's just very obvious that girls have a little less strength than guys. So this is just another thing that comes into play. I understand again, she's angry. She's angry. She's got that adrenaline there. But the way that she just pummels her head in, and her head her face just caves in, on itself. And obviously it's so like fast and concussive. It must have been that Sarah just kind of lets it happen. Like she just kind of forgets that she has other limbs or whatever. So instead of reaching up and being like, "Oh, get your fucking hands off me" or whatever, or "Ow, my face hurts," she just kind of like takes it. And she's like, um, which I guess it must have been that concussive. I don't know. I was in there, but I don't think that would have happened to me. Anyways, another thing here. Bear, when it's happening, does shit. Does nothing. Does nothing. When it happens, he's like worried about getting something on his shirt. Want to know what I mean? So she's here, right, getting pummeled, right? Blood is starting to splatter, and he goes like this instead of like, "No," or "Wait, don't do this. I'll help you," or "Let me help." He goes, "Oh God, that was really yikes. That was that did not make my face look good at all. God, that was bad. I'm never doing that again." But he was like, you know, in the corner, and even afterward, when she's like, Nikki's talking to him, and she goes around and is like, "Hey, baby, hey, baby. He's just frozen. He's just. Now, I understand a lot of people are going to say, it's frozen in fear. Have you never been frozen in fear before? You're being so unrealistic right now. But I don't think that's unrealistic. I don't think it's unrealistic. I think if you see somebody, I think you're a bitch. I think you're a bitch. If you see somebody that you really care about, you don't even have to love them. But obviously, he at least very, very much cared about Sarah. You see someone you love being beaten to a pulp, and you just sit there paralyzed. You a bitch, man. You just let her die. You could have done something about that. Obviously, you know that Nikki loves you. Probably would have maybe done something different if you had spoken up, but you just let her get pummeled. And afterward, he helped her carry the body, carry Sarah's body, and put it in a briefcase. I understand to an extent. Maybe delayed reaction. Maybe, oh man, he really this is sad. This is, you know, I'm frozen in shock, and it really sets in later because it does. He's sitting in the car and he's like, ah! Ah! Freaking out or whatever. But you can't have that kind of delayed reaction, man. You just can't. You just can't, dude. Because if you had reacted any sooner, I mean, oh my god, man, the whole fucking world would have blown up, and he would have realized, like, that's probably a bad example. A car could have exploded the children's hospital in front of him, and he would have reacted to it. He would have been like, it would have been 2 business days later where he is standing in the same place, and he finally is like, no! Fucking cleanup is there and everything, and he's like, no, wait! Ah! Not the children's hospital, no! Not my girlfriend, no! Well, hold on. Not implying that not implying that his girlfriend is at a children's hospital. I'm talking more in the sense of, like, he's reacting to the girl in the car. Pause there. But that's just another sense. That's just another case where he's just being a bitch. And then obviously, there's a little bit more to talk about, but I don't want to get too far into the weeds. But there's a little bit more to talk about, obviously, when he's like gets to the end of the movie and she's she's like done all this stuff and then killed Sarah, and then she kills Ian at some point. And those are a little bit more justified to be like, mildly angry over. Hey, dude, that wasn't cool. I understand that more. Um, but you have to understand that she did all this out of love. She really did. Um, it's written in the papers. It's trying to think of a cliche for this. It's proof in the pudding. It's a good one. Um, she's doing this out of love, really. And love makes you do weird things. We can all understand that. But just his reaction to a lot of it, it's like we obviously, and this is my whole point. We obviously go through life with this idea of, man, I'm gonna find the perfect person. Man, I can't wait. I'm gonna find the one for me, and she's gonna be perfect, or he's gonna be perfect, and I'm gonna have a great life with this person, no problemo. It's such an unreal. I can't believe that we still have this kind of expectation nowadays. It's ridiculous, and it's sad. It's sad because we get into this constant thing where you see more and more commonplace today, where we get into this constant cycle where people get into relationships thinking this is going to be it. They spend years thinking that this person is going to be it. And then they find out that this person has a flaw, has a problem, has something that that person doesn't like, and that that person isn't really the perfect person. And we forget that we're human, you know. And then we're like, oh man, I don't think that I want to be with this person anymore. And we back out of that relationship, like we're going back to the lobby in Fortnite, and we're like, let's queue up again. It's just not how it works, man. At least it shouldn't be how it works. It's sad because you hurt people in the process. You really do. You hurt yourself. Because I feel like anyone that you, whether you like it or not, anyone that you share any sort of connection with for any amount of time, you always leave a little piece, just a small little piece of yourself with that person. And it adds up the more that you do it. It really does. So, I feel like you got to be careful, and you shouldn't be doing that a lot. And just we're just not big on commitment, and it's sad. It really is. Because you see less marriages, less successful relationships, less children being born, less, you know, children being brought up with good ideals of what it is to be in a relationship, to respect one another. Um, and so that's my whole point at the end of the day is that, he he didn't like that, she had some quirks. You know, she she took the cat out of whatever he had a cat that died in the beginning, like overdose. I guess got into some of his medicine. So rip kitty. But anyways, um, I don't know where he put that cat, but for some reason, a while later, like a week later, she happened to find that cat. So I guess it was easily accessible. I don't know where. Just keeping it in the fridge or something, saving it for later. I don't know what he was doing with it. But she finds that cat and she puts that cat. And she makes like this beautiful memorial for this cat, and she puts the dead cat on it, to really signify her respect and care for something that Bear cared about deeply. And Bear's just disgusted, just ugh, what the fuck is wrong with you? And that kind of care is just put to waste. But she didn't let that stop her. She again, she takes it. She Now I understand this will be controversial, and I will say that I think me personally this one is a little too far, but I still understand the intention. So we forget about people's intentions so much of the time. But she makes him a sandwich out of the cat. Now I get I get where this is. What is wrong with you? What the fuck? And I agree. I agree. I have to be honest here. I agree. I think that was a little too far. I personally would not like to eat my dead pet unless that pet happened to be like a chicken or like a pig or like something that I usually eat. In which case I would be more acceptable of eating that dish. But a cat, yeah, I don't think that I'm the right ethnicity to be eating cats, unfortunately. So um, and I think that was a little bit of a misjudgment on her point, on her side. But we all have faults. We all do. So she makes him a sandwich out of a cat or whatever, and he eats it, and obviously he likes it because he eats and swallows the first bite. It's just the fact that he knows later, he finds out after the first bite that it was his cat, and then he throws it up. But when he took that first bite, he didn't like, what is this? Obviously, he liked it because he chewed it up and he swallowed it. Blah blah blah. It's just a fact of what And there's so many things like that where it's like we foods that we really love today. I can't name it on any off the top of my head, but I wouldn't. It probably wouldn't take me long to figure out some foods that we really like today have some disgusting ingredients. things that if you knew were actually in those foods, probably would, like there was this whole thing where McDonald's makes their burgers out of the worst pizza pieces of meat, or there's this whole thing where McDonald's makes burgers out of pink slime the other day. Which I don't know how much of that is true, but either way, people still eat McDonald's burgers all the time. See, it's about the taste. It's not about what's in it. So I think there's an argument there, but I digress. He just finds out that there's a cat and he doesn't like it. He throws it up and he gets really mad about it. Um, and I guess that's potentially justified there, but the whole point that I'm trying to bring up is that she did it out of love. She really did. She wanted that cat, that person, that pet person. Well, I guess it depends on what you believe in, but cats can be people too, I guess. But she wanted that creature to be a part of him forever. You know, and I think we all feel that way from time to time, where we wish that the things around us that we care about could be a part of us forever. And she was just trying to find a way to do that. Was it misplaced? Was it a bad judgment call? Sure, sure. But was it out of love? You have to admit that too. You have to. If you're gonna call out the bad in someone, you gotta call out the good too, and vice versa. And that's just what we're doing here. So, long story short, if you watched Obsession and you liked it for the reason of, man, I thought that I agreed with Bear in most of these situations. Then you're a cuck and you're not loyal and you're afraid of commitment. And I guess that's okay in this day and age, but me personally, that's just not who I am. Ladies, now you know. If you're ever on a date with someone, you can ask them, "Hey, what do you think of Obsession?" Well, I thought that it was a really good movie. Hmm, interesting. Very interesting. So you're telling me that you're not loyal, that you're not willing to have a commitment, you're very scared of that, and that you're a cock. Very interesting. Waiter, I think we'll take the check. And that's that. So, yeah, that was my I think that's it. Yeah, that's my review of Obsession. And what I think about it. So,